In the parched land of Eradus, they've suffered under centuries of enslavement and oppression at the boot of the Way. After a population emergency on Earth caused by a drop in infertility, the cruel viceroy Griffin now wants Moss, the leader of the rebellious Eradus, captured. Young boys, when interrogated regarding Moss, refused to betray him even under the threat of execution. When one boy was about to be murdered with his friends, a woman appears, skillfully changing Griffin's tactics by telling him that he will get to see Moss bested too. Otherwise, Hirokin, who is human, finds his way to access the arid society and reveals himself. The people, initially suspicious, welcome him when they recognize him. They lament Griffin being cruel and infertile, and they wonder how a human being would ever want to treat them with kindness. One boy finds communication with Hirokin, and the boy was embraced into their fold. Across the mountain, Griffin observes, and when Hirokin asks for an audience with the society leader, he's met with skepticism because of his humanity. As Griffin's forces close in, the leader is betrayed, but ultimately asks Hirokin for assistance. Hirokin advises them to flee, and as the Griffins launch their assault, the master sent a boy to pass on a message to Moss. Amidst all this chaos, Hirokin slaughtered valiantly, taking down several Griffins. But when he saw them get a hold of the boy, by the time they were slaughtering the Eradus, his heart sank, the sound of them capturing the boy. Suddenly, Hirokin jolted awake, and the vivid horrors of his nightmare faded away. His wife, visibly concerned for his well-being, comforted him with the assurance that nothing could ever sever their bond, and they shared a tender kiss that brought him solace. As he made his way to the cave bar, a desperate man fell to his knees before Myra, pleading for her to heal his ailing daughter. He offered valuable resources in return for her help, but Hirokin vehemently refused, leading to a heated exchange between them. The atmosphere was tense, especially with Moss being a fugitive, and many of the once regardless belonging to the arid people, and just then, the ominous sounds of approaching Griffins filled the air, triggering a panic that sent everyone into a frenzied stampede. As the chaos spread, Hirokin and his wife shouted for their son, who had been playing nearby. They were able to take cover behind the wall of the cave as the Griffins, dressed in their fight suits, emerged from the ship and began their search for survivors. The Griffins also found a comb with Arid's hair that confirmed Hirokin's child's identity, prompting them to double down on their search. When the Griffins attacked his wife and son in retaliation for Hirokin's defense of his family, they awakened Hirokin's fury. He confronted them, but was quickly overwhelmed and fell to the ground, watching his own family being chained. Taken captive, they were brought to the Griffins' fortress and made to participate in vicious spectacles, and Hirokin spotted Renault and his family amongst the prisoners. As the two men peddled beverages, Hansu showed up to face the crowd, bragging that nobody could outdo his time. In the arena, Hirokin, Renault, and the other gladiator found themselves shackled in iron chains, forced to engage in a savage battle where the stakes were life and death. The loser's wife faced execution as a cruel punishment for defeat, and amidst the chaos, one fighter was thrust into the center of the ring where deadly iron spikes struck down his wife in an instant. The combatants fought fiercely, driven by the desperate need to protect their loved ones from imminent slaughter. Griffin, having declared Hirokin the victor, callously ordered his guards to restrain him, ensuring that Hirokin's wife would face a horrific fate. Witnessing this, Hansu felt a deep sense of despair as Hirokin's hopes were shattered. Later, two men stepped out of their bodies, exchanging morbid small talk, before one of them realized someone was still alive. The two men, however, were no match for the stealthy Hansu, who appeared just in time to rescue Hirokin by killing them both. He helped Hirokin to his feet, guiding him past the horrors of Griffin's lair, and half a day of walking later, he'd led Hirokin out of Griffin's reach, told him to keep walking until he reaches a place where a friend named Moss would help him, and Hansu also gave Hirokin a sword and told him to walk strong in the faith of Wei, their god. Hirokin plodded on, but fatigue finally overtook him, and he lowered his blade, entranced, dreaming of the days when his outplows were plentiful and verdant. He passed out after seeing a tree and was discovered by an arid man who brought him back home. Weak and disoriented, Hirokin returned to consciousness to find himself surrounded by Moss's family. The next morning, Hirokin woke up to a worried Mirren giving him water. Hirokin was sitting alone that evening until Mirren showed up with a homemade drink. Moss and Kane kept their eyes on the pair from a distance, and as she described their tribes and contrasting cultures, she told him how much she respected them. After she'd excused herself to retire for the night, Kane made his way over to Mirren with a soft delivery reminding her to take care of herself. Mirren put a ribbon on the dead tree the next day and somehow put life back in that dirt. But the arrival of deacons unsettled Griffin's followers, who felt that they were coming too close to Moss's turf. Hirokin approached Moss, telling him he wanted revenge on Griffin. But Moss, wise and contemplative, told Hirokin that their shared humanity united them in spite of their differences, as they breathed the same air and had the same needs and desires. Moss greeted Hirokin, assuring him that he could learn the ways of his tribe and join them, and he told Hirokin that together they could change the world. The following morning, Hirokin went looking for Moss, impatient to start his journey. Moss challenged Hirokin with an array of tasks, pushing him to grow both mentally and physically stronger. But Moss supported Hirokin when he stumbled, assuring him that the day would come when he would be prepared to take on Griffin. In the cave alone, Moss divulged a secret Griffin could never understand, a profound bond between Wei, their god that bestowed strength, guidance, and wisdom. Moss told him what his people had endured over the last 1,000 years, and if Reich can build a strong relationship with Wei, he will make Hirokin powerful by lighting the way from within. Moss had also read Hirokin's turmoil, perceived the guilt and grief that would not release him since the loss of his wife, and he advised Hirokin to drop his burdens, to cut ties with the past, and create a new path. The time had come for Hirokin, and he readied to depart. Moss, clearly nervous, crouched beside them, and Mirren told him to go with Hirokin. She volunteered to carry her weapons, but Hirokin asked to take her hand instead, chaining her to himself in a gesture of trust. "Take care of your people," he told her as he left. "You are so important to them." Back at Griffin's palace, there was all this excitement for the event about to go down. His wife Tara was also there, and Orange watched, green with jealousy at how Tara drew attention. Griffin came up to Tara and told her she would enjoy the day's action because her position had changed. Hirokin paused to catch his breath, and Mirren found him, and the two of them could not help wrapping their arms around each other. Inside the palace, Griffin changed out of his royal clothes and found Tara in the bedroom waiting for him, and she asked for their son and what she was doing there. Griffin admitted he wanted a child, ridiculing Tara's circumstance that they could be the cause of happiness for another if she but remain at his side. He vowed to give her back their son if she did, and Hirokin and Mirren bypassed the palace grounds and were met briefly by Hanzu. Hanzu then offered them counsel and remained doubtful, but helped them anyway. Back in the palace, Tara readied herself for Griffin, getting cleaned up with a shower. Orange, full of envy, teased her, claiming she could not say no to Griffin's desires. When Hirokin finally walked in, Orange wasted no time showing doubts, suggesting that now she was with Griffin, Tara had lost her allegiance to him. Meanwhile, on the opposite end, Moss, Kane, and the tribe reached the palace and discovered mangled corpses lying around. Tara and her son then began to cry, and Kane ranted at Moss for adding fuel to the fire, and Griffin cruelly hugged Tara's son, terrifying her. While they did harm to the Hira, Hirokin had approached and attacked Griffin's deacon in an attempt to fight beside Mirren and Hansu. They did their best, killing many enemies, and soon withdrew to safety, begging two men to cover for them against the deacons. Returning to the palace, Griffin and Tara had no choice but to spend the night together if she intended to make sure her son was safe. Arid tribe, which had been freed, rejoiced and assembled. That very night, Moss could not sleep, and soon enough, the deacons came and made Moss and Kane kneel before them. Elsewhere, Mirren was talking to Hirokin, who thanked her for the freedom of the tribe, and when it came close to a kiss, Hirokin pulled away, annoying Mirren. At that moment, Hansu interrupted to announce the arrival of another band that hailed Hirokin and flocked to his ranks. Griffin anticipated Terra's intention in the palace and caught her wrist as she attempted to stab him with her hairpin, but at the last moment we see that Terra was rescued by Orange, and amidst all of it, Moss was tortured by Griffin's deacons, a motif against their jailers. Hirokin arrived the next day to a scene of heart-wrenching violence. Moss and Terra were kneeling to be shot, and Terra's son watched in terror as his mother prepared to die. Prior to the outbreak of conflict, Mir and Hansu and other allied factions swarmed the routes, cutting down wayward deacons in short order. But in a sudden moment of conviction, Moss escaped his bonds, and with Terra took the fight to them, leaving a trail of bodies in their wake. Hirokin had a keen focus amidst the chaotic scene, like he was predicting and planning for every subsequent move in advance, and he had this clarity which allowed him to save Terra just in the nick of time. But the battle turned deadly, with Mirren being stabbed, leaving both Hirokin and Moss heartbroken. As the battle continued to rage, Griffin himself came down to confront Hirokin, and the battle was savage, with Griffin dominating him in the beginning, but by then, Hirokin had reached his spiritual connection in his mind, figuring out how to center the energy in his body. Reality began to conform to whatever he had been imagining, and he was able to strike down Griffin, but the triumph proved costly, as Hirokin finally fell, predicting his own death. With his last words, he confided in Terra's son Neuron the burden of caring for his ailing mother in their tribe. And so, as Hirokin himself descended into darkness, he recounted the true meaning of peace and became a beacon of what was to come for those who remained to elevate the struggle for something more.